Welcome to the podcast for communicationsteroids.com. My name is Tim Gonzo-Ford.
And I'm Roger Pike.
Roger, it's the weekly podcast, which is going to evolve, I think. The first 8 sessions, as you may recall, the last 8 weeks, have actually been focused on the program that we've been doing. That is over. We have yet to create a second 8-part program. So we're looking at other things that have to do with communications, and that, of course, is a big umbrella. There's a lot of things that fall into that. But we did determine through a survey, through our listeners and our viewers, Well, we do have viewers. We're on YouTube. And our readers of our newsletter, that one of the things that is of high interest has to do with press relations. And one of the ideas you came up was to talk about free press and what is free press and free media. What do you mean by that when you say that?
Well, everybody understands what the bought media is. When you go down to your local advertising sales representative and write a check, and they put your spot on the air, that's bought media. Free media is when the press comes to you to write a story about an event or a person or something that's going on, and they put it in their news or in their newsletter or their newspaper or on the radio or on television or whatever. It is your access to people that you don't have to buy.
And I think if you're new to this, it will probably be a good idea to start locally. There's local radio stations, there's local TV stations perhaps, certainly maybe a local newspaper. Even small community newspapers might be a good place to start to where you learn how to meet the folks that can write those stories and put you on the radio and do the talk shows and that sort of thing.
Start locally and move outward. To tell you the importance of the free media, I can recall having worked for a certain politician who shall forever remain nameless, who instructed me that if I wanted to keep my job as one of his press assistants, I would make sure that his name was in the major local newspaper at least once a week for the rest of my life.
Okay. It's quite a challenge.
It was a challenge, and for the most part, I managed it.
Well, now he didn't say exactly how that name should appear in what context, did he? He just laid down the gauntlets.
Yeah, he had to be quoted in the newspaper. He had to be mentioned in the newspaper at least once a week.
Well, let's talk about radio, because obviously our background is radio. That's a good place to start. There's a lot of local radio that have morning shows that need guests or need just a short, maybe 5-minute bit, or a lot of them actually will have talk shows where they need an hour guest. They need someone to come in and talk for an hour about something.
Well, the bulk of my experience is in radio. Not all of it, but the bulk of it is in radio. Radio is as opposed to some other media, actively seeks content. That is to say, television wants the pretty pictures, and they're going to go where the pictures are the best. That's what television is all about. Print is a little bit less so now, but it used to be especially true, and is still true to an extent. They're pretty arrogant. They believe that the stories that should be developed in the newspapers are the ones that they have conceived and the ones they have researched, and that's what they want to put in. Now, you can break into print, don't get me wrong, and we'll tell you some of the ways to do it, but they're a little bit more self-contained. Radio, on the other hand, actively seeks content. Which means that you can push to radio, you can pitch to radio stories that they'll use.
And I think radio is a great place to start because you can do it any time of day. You can do it from virtually anywhere if you got a good cell phone connection, although I would suggest for the benefit of your listeners and the host that you give them a hardline connection because that will sound better. But you can do it at 3 in the morning on the Pacific Coast and be on a 6 a.m. show in Florida, and then an hour later you can be on a Phoenix show at a different time, and you can do this from your home. You can do this in your pajamas if you want, for heaven's sake.
You can get a lot of mentions pretty quick.
Yeah, and so it does take actively seeking that out, and there are resources to do that. But I think radio is a great place to start. So let's talk about some other elements of getting into print or getting into the press free.
Well, the first thing that you need to do is to make it a priority. And what I mean to say by that is you can't say, I want to be in the free media and send out a press release. That's not going to do the job. What you need to do is to task someone, like this senator that I worked for, task someone with the job of getting you into the media, and then do the things by which access is obtained. Get to know the reporters. Get to know the reporters who particularly cover the beat that you are interested in presenting yourself in. I mean, whether it's science and technology or business or whatever, get to know the reporters who cover that beat. So make it a priority, task somebody with a job, and then get to know the people who are in the job, and then pitch to them in ways that they can use. And by that, we'll talk about it more in depth later on, but don't pitch them, don't make a sales pitch. Instead, give them an interesting storyline. If you're opening a plant that's going to employ 50 new people, you're going to get free coverage, and you should make a point of it. You shouldn't open that plant with a ribbon-cutting ceremony that includes the president, the 50 new employees, and nobody else.
You need a story that has a hook to it, a human interest side or a fascinating side or something that is newsworthy. You can't just expect to be covered just because you're contacting them. Have a hook. Have something that is of interest to their listeners. Know what their listeners want. Know what their listeners are into. Know what the host is all about.
And this is especially true these days. Local newspapers even are trending towards local coverage. They're trying to compete with blogs that are more national, so they're trending local. If you've just hired somebody new who's going to be a manager and move to the community, they're going to put that in. I mean, they may not be very big. It may just be a few column inches, but they're going to mention it in their business section, and you want them to. It's free advertising and of the best kind. And let's tell you, before we go any further with this, let's tell you why it's advertising of the best kind. What is the advantages of the free media? Well, the first is obvious. Believability.
Yep.
You're not buying access, and people know that you're not buying access. Whenever they see a spot, they know that it's a spot, it's an advertisement, and you're going to say whatever you want to say, and you've paid for it. But when it's free media, it's coming from a third party. That's the reporter. The reporter is presumably disinterested and wants to present only the facts. So instantly you obtain credibility by going into the free media and by getting mentions in the free media. The second is penetration. Millions of people listen to the radio every morning on their way to work.
Yep.
I mean, it's huge. The numbers are just huge. And the third big advantage is, hey, it's free. Yeah.
And if he's talking to you, the listener presumes that they've already made the decision that you're the expert. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, let's say you're talking about, doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a product or service, but if you're talking about it from an information standpoint, you've got this new whiz-bang loan from your real estate company that can get a whole lot of people to buy their house in 10 years instead of 20, and they don't have to, they can save a lot of money. You are going to be presumed as the expert, even though your ultimate goal may be to sell more loans or sell more of your service or whatever that consulting, whatever that case may be. You are presumed to be the expert because he is talking to you. So that is a great hook right there.
If you're thinking about trying to access the free media, have an interesting story that the reporter is going to want to tell. And remember, no hype or overt commercialism. Right. That will kill their interest almost instantly. Then the second is to understand what the media needs. That is to say, radio relies on the soundbite. So give them soundbite. If you're opening a new factory, give them what they call nat sound. That is natural sound of whatever machinery is running in the background. Go ahead and provide that for them. Nat sound helps you sell the story. And then give them 3 or 4 quotations. And I don't mean in print. I mean audio that they can put on the air. And
5 and 10 second sound bites that you can that you've rehearsed, that you know the answer to the questions. Like you can say things like, the main point about this is, the most important thing to remember about this is that sort of thing. So anything to wrap up before, because I don't want to spend too much time on our podcast,
exactly,
talking about this, but we want to keep this to a fairly short length for the podcast. But
just to wrap up, never underestimate the value of free media. It is huge, and it can be a very important part of your overall marketing plan.
Roger, thanks for sharing your insight with us here on Communications Steroids. That's Roger Pike, and I'm Tim Gordon.